that, I'll turn it over to Andy from GeoSpock to give us some key takeaways from the panel. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, and really a big thanks to the panel for explaining to us what is machine learning, what is AI. But I figured it would be quite useful for us for a moment to just sort of take an overall view. With the idea being that we've scanned your badges on the way in, that we have an infographic which incorporates many of the inputs that you've had on this morning's panel, but I've been busy updating it as well. I think we've got some really new insights from the panel this morning. So this chart, for example, really is a generalized chart of what the promise and potentially the issues of AI and machine learning is for the industry. Because if you look at the growth of data, which we've talked about, and the fact that a lot of it's machine generated now, it does create an issue, which is, you can see in that bottom line, it curves down, where the valued extraction out of data actually becomes more difficult and more expensive as the data scale grows. And the offering of machine learning, and as it evolves into AI, is that business value increases. And as Steve's mentioned a couple of times, we've already got examples of that. McKinsey's released a report in the summer, which is well worth looking at, which also indicates the business value that can be gained from this kind of technology. But there are issues, one of which we've talked about, which is the scale of data, and actually, first of all, who's got it, have they got enough of it, where you have, how do you actually process it, which is the point that Steve's making. But I think something I would add to this chart from this morning's conversation is the importance of trust in all this sort of notion of the black box, and where does that fit in? And perhaps we can cover that in a moment. I just wanted to explain a little bit about kind of where we sit, if you like, in this ecosystem, because as we've said, AI is still feels like it's out there, and machine learning is in its early days. And I'm not going to give a sales pitch now. I'm just going to say that if you haven't got it already from what Steve said, we understand complex data at scale. We know how to organize it and we know how to process it. And that's for different levels of output. So it might be about visualizing and exploring data, which we do through our Illuminate product, or it might be more like a data analytics tool, which is an SQL interface, which we call Extrapolate. And into the future, we're ready. You get to see the theme here with the 8s, but it's all about having the right kind of machine learning expertise in the business, which we have some, and we're building to deliver Cognate. But you can see for us, it doesn't really matter what the data source is, or the scale of it, or whether it's structured or unstructured. That's what we're geared to do. So that's kind of the end of the sales pitch. But I did want to try and have something by way of an output and say, well, what is the promise of machine learning and AI? And this is something that we've called the 3 E's, and one of them is that ability to predict what's going to happen in the future. From quite complex stuff that Ahmed was talking about, well, if you've got all these journey paths, can you actually work out what the next step is? And that's got a part of the promise, and actually where a lot of the potential value is. It's about the efficiencies, whether that's about your targeting or your cost savings, user productivity. There are a lot of efficiency promises which we're already seeing in those big names in the industry. But perhaps, at the heart of what's important to the advertising community is what does it mean to your end consumer? And I think we can all appreciate that if you know where someone is, if you get their sense of state of mind, if we were talking about streaming audio and stuff like that, which are clues, enormous streams of data. If you can process that, then it's a promise of delivering a powerful customer experience. And the last chart I wanted to share, and as I say, this is part of the infographic, is the sorts of steps that might be involved in thinking about where the value could be in your businesses. And so I think it's been mentioned a couple of times on the panel, it's about starting in the right place, pretty much a step back and consider what are the problems that we want to solve right now and into the future. It's not just about kind of thinking about your existing data sources, but where might this go in the future to add value to what it is that you're doing? Often it's a hindrance right now to think, oh God, another data source, how am I going to deal with it? I think this is about thinking into the future about, well, when and if that's not a problem through the machine learning and AI promise, where might this take the business? And so that's a kind of a brainstorming process which involves all sorts of folk. That's ultimately at C-level in the business have got a commitment to that kind of vision of where this can go. And then it's about the tools, and this is kind of where a business like ours steps in terms of understanding the technology, the data sources, how it needs to be organized, and just being able to create a framework for agile understanding. So then through a deployment and empowerment process which involves all the members of the team and engagement processes with your customers. So I won't go into that in any more detail. We're coming to the end of this session now. I'd just like to thank so many of you for coming and showing an interest, and we'd love to carry on that conversation. We've got a stand in the hall. Thank you very much.